Hey, we're out here at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway again, and we're going to talk about steering the motorcycle. All right, so I said we're going to talk about steering the motorcycle, and there's a few different ways that you can do that. You can use the handlebars, you can use your weight. You could try to use the foot pegs, but that really doesn't work very well. It doesn't really have much effect pushing down on the foot pegs, or putting weight on the foot pegs doesn't really do a whole lot. And I'll have some good footage to kind of demonstrate that. But we're going to talk about steering the motorcycle, and before we have any conversation, I'd like to define the term, right? So when I talk about steering, what I'm talking about is taking the motorcycle from upright to leaned over, right? So it's that part where you go from here to here. Once you're here, you're cornering, and you can just leave it on that angle through the rest of the corner. To me, that's not steering, right? That's just cornering or riding the lean angle, or however you want to term it. Steering to me is taking the motorcycle and changing its lean angle, right? So simple definition, right? But it's kind of important because you steer the motorcycle on the entry to the corner, typically. Sometimes in the middle of the corner, you might have to change the lean angle, add some lean angle if the radius decreases, or maybe even take some lean angle away if the radius opens up. But for the most part, you steer the motorcycle on the entry to the corner. You change that lean angle on the entry to the corner, right? So that's a lot of words about stuff you already know. So anyway, so let's talk about steering the motorcycle. So first off, you can steer it a number of ways. You can steer it using the handlebars. I think this is the primary way that you steer the motorcycle, right? Everybody knows about counter steering and how that works. You press forward on the handlebar and the bike will go in that direction. It's kind of opposite to what you would think. You turn the handlebars to the right and the bike goes to the left. So that's why they call it counter steering. So in any case, you can push on the handlebar, push it forward. You can pull on the handlebar and pull it backwards. You can do both if you need a little bit more power, maybe in a higher speed corner. But to steer the motorcycle, for the most part, you use the handlebars, right? By pushing them forward or pulling them back. Pushing down on the handlebar or pulling up on the handlebar has very little effect on the motorcycle's lean angle, right? There's not a lot of leverage that you have there over a big mass of weight and a whole bunch of very powerful gyroscopes. So if you want to steer the motorcycle, if you want to change the lean angle, typically use counter steering, right? So
demonstrations of counter steering. I have the bike at 80 miles an hour in neutral, and I'm steering by simply pushing on the handlebar with my fingertips. Notice how quickly the motorcycle changes its lean angle. Just pushing on the handlebar, not a lot of pressure, just using my fingertips. And I'm going to do the same thing, 80 miles an hour in neutral, and then I'm going to pull on the handlebar just using my fingertips, and you can see the motorcycle. You can steer it pretty accurately and pretty aggressively if you want to. A little bit of pressure, the motorcycle changes lean angle very quickly. So here I'm going to use both arms, pushing and pulling at the same time, leaving the bike in gear, and I can steer it as aggressively as I like, lean it over as far as I want, turn it as quickly as I like, just by putting pressure on the handlebars.
you can influence the motorcycle's lean angle using your body weight, right? So, and the higher up on the motorcycle you move that body weight, the more effect it's going to have. So if you move your butt around, right, because it's low and close to the center of gravity on the bike, it actually doesn't do a whole lot. You can move your butt back and forth and the motorcycle won't really change its lean angle too much. If you move your upper body to the left or the right, it's going to make the motorcycle lean over in one direction or the other. However, it's I don't want to say it's ineffective, but it's not as effective as using the handlebars, right? So if you move your whole body weight to the inside, you can get the bike to kind of veer off, but it doesn't really turn, right? So at a high speed, and you're going into a corner, you need to be able to turn the bike in a relatively short distance in many corners. And to do that, trying to use only your body weight wouldn't really do a whole lot. It'll help, right? So moving your body into the corner would help.
So now we're going to do a demonstration trying to steer the motorcycle by only weighting the foot pegs. So I have the motorcycle in neutral at 80 miles an hour again. And I'm trying to steer it only by putting pressure down on the foot pegs. So I'm putting all my weight on one foot peg or the other. And you can see that just weighting the foot pegs doesn't really do much. Here we go, do the same thing again. Balancing just using my fingertips on the tank. Putting all my weight on the left peg, all my weight on the right peg. So downward pressure, weight, pushing down on the foot pegs with as much force as I can put into it, and the motorcycle doesn't really change lean angle very much. So here, I'm trying to use as much pressure on the foot pegs as I can, as well as just moving my butt, not a whole lot of upper body weight. It'll steer the motorcycle, mostly due to the upper body movement, but the moving your butt around and putting a lot of pressure, you can see the motorcycle does turn, but it turns very slowly and it doesn't lean over very far. So the higher the weight, right, just using your upper body, you can actually get the motorcycle to steer fairly effectively. So just moving your shoulders into the corner, because that weight's up high, is going to make the motorcycle change direction. But you can see here, like as much as I can move my weight, right, hanging off, so I don't have the handlebars to hold on to, so it's hard to really hang way off the bike. But in any case, you can get the motorcycle to steer. It'll veer off left or right, but it doesn't change lean angle very quickly.
So in any case, if you want to steer the bike, I would recommend trying to use the handlebars and counter steer. Works very well. So when it comes to steering, there's a few things that you need to think about. Number one, there's the location at which you want to steer. So going into any corner like the one behind me, you should have some sort of reference point that says, I want to steer the motorcycle here, right? So that's where you're going to give it your steering input. So from there, you also need to know how quickly do you want to lean the motorcycle over, right? That's going to determine how much force you put into the handlebars. The harder you push on the handlebar, the faster that motorcycle will come over, right? So how quickly do I want to turn it? And then the third thing is, how far do I want to lean it over? How far do I need to lean this thing over for the speed that I'm traveling and to get on the line that I want? So in this corner behind me, so this is turn 2 at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway, and you're going, if we were going counterclockwise, which is what we're doing this weekend, you would be entering the corner in this direction, and you would want to turn the motorcycle in on the right-hand side of the racetrack, about where my bicycle is, somewhere in that general area, maybe a little bit before it, maybe a little bit after it. And that really depends on how aggressively you can steer the motorcycle, right? So, and the idea is you go from parallel to the curbing, you turn the motorcycle, and you head towards the cone. That's your apex cone, right? The apex is actually just slightly past the cone. So in this case, you need to turn the motorcycle pretty quickly. You need to go from upright to leaned over and on your line in a very short distance. And you're entering this corner at a pretty fast rate. So you need to be able to turn the bike pretty quickly here. And because of that, you're going to use a pretty forceful counter steering input to get the motorcycle to lean over, right? So you want to get the motorcycle to lean over quickly. You're going to put a lot of pressure on the bar, make the motorcycle turn. You also need to be accurate with how much you lean it over, right? So we're going to turn it on that spot. We're going to turn it quickly, and you need to know how much you're going to be able to turn it. And then what's going to determine that is that you want to put yourself on an arc that's going to put you close to the curbing near that cone, right? So you need to lean the motorcycle over enough to put you on a line that's going to put you next to the curbing right at that traffic cone. So the way that you do that is by actually spotting that traffic cone before you turn the motorcycle. So when you're going into the corner, before you get to the point where you're going to turn, you're going to look and spot that traffic cone, and that's going to tell you how much you need to lean it over and how quickly you need to lean it over for the speed that you're traveling. So the idea is you're approaching the corner, you size it up, you know, okay, this is the point where I need to turn. That's where I'm going to give it my steering input. You're looking into the apex to find where you want to go, and that's going to tell you how quickly you need to turn the bike and how far you need to lean the bike over. Hopefully, if you do all that stuff right, then you're going to be on a good line and everything's cool. So let's go take a look at another corner. All right, so here we are in the entrance to the previous corner, to the one I was talking about. This is turn 3, and if we were going counterclockwise, we'd be heading into this corner in this direction. So as you can see, the entry to this corner is much more gradual, right? So it's a very sweeping corner. It's high speed. You're coming in here at a high rate of speed. You have a pretty decent sized straightaway before it. So you're coming into this corner, probably going to turn somewhere around where that traffic cone is, right? That's the last braking marker. We have braking markers set up, and you're probably going to turn in somewhere around that traffic cone, maybe at the beginning of the curbing. And you're actually going to want to apex this corner before that traffic cone, probably about 20 feet before it. So in this corner, because it's more gradual, you're coming in at a high rate of speed, but because the corner isn't as sharp as the one we were talking about before, you don't need to turn the bike as aggressively, right? You can kind of ease it into the corner a little bit more. Maybe you want to carry the brakes into this corner, and if you ease the bike into the corner, it'll allow you to do that a little bit more safely, right? So one thing, I did a previous video about trail braking, and if you're going to turn the bike aggressively, like in that corner that I was talking about before, turn 2, you need to be careful about how hard you are on the brakes, right? If you're going to steer the bike very aggressively, you don't want to be super hard on the brakes when you do that. So in this corner, we don't have to steer the bike super aggressively. We can steer it more gradually. Therefore, we can use a little bit more brake pressure while we're steering it. So it's kind of a trade-off there, right? It allows you, if you want, that you can carry a little bit more entry speed, maybe carry your braking zone deeper into the corner, right? Trail brake this one a little bit, because you don't have to turn the bike as aggressively, or it doesn't really pay off to turn the bike as aggressively here. So going into this corner, your steering input is going to be a little bit less aggressive. You can maybe even steer the bike mostly with your body weight here, right? Because you don't have to turn it that hard. So oftentimes, just by hanging off the inside of the bike, you can get the bike to turn enough for a corner like this. I don't know that would necessarily work 100%. You probably still need to use a little bit of counter steering input to get the bike to turn at the rate of speed that you're going here. But the body weight and just a little subtle counter steering pressure would help the bike turn into this corner. So just a little differentiation here in that you still have to know where you're going to turn the bike. You still need to know where you want to point the thing, how far you need to lean it over, and you should also make a decision about how quickly you want to steer it. In this case, we'll steer it at the traffic cone, let's say. We're going to turn it at a little bit slower rate, and we're not going to lean it over too far because the corner entry is pretty gradual and we have plenty of time to get to that apex. Okay, so we're talking about turn 4 now, going counterclockwise here at Chuckwalla Valley Raceway. So the way this corner is configured, you actually have 2 turns together. We have turn 5, which is behind me here. You come out of turn 5 along this curbing, and then you head into turn 4, which is another right-hander. There's really not a lot of space between these two, right? So you're going to probably be leaned over this whole time. You almost treat it like a double apex single corner, although it is 2 corners. There's a little tiny short straightaway, but you don't really get too far straight up and down. So in any case, as you come in here, you have to, again, have a spot where you want to turn it. That end of the curbing makes a good reference point. And then you need to know where you're headed. And you're headed towards that apex cone, which is way over there, right? So it's pretty hard to see even from here. Quite some distance between your turn point and your apex. So as you come in here, you have to know how far you're going to lean it over and how quickly you're going to lean it over, right? So We're going to turn it on the spot. We're going to lean it over far enough that it's going to put us on an arc that's going to head us towards that cone. And we don't need to turn it very quickly because we have quite some distance. It's a very gradual entry into this corner. So this corner is interesting too because it kind of tightens up a little bit. It's a bit of a decreasing radius. At least you definitely perceive it that way when you're coming into it on a motorcycle. So whether it is or not, if you looked at it from a satellite view, I'd have to check. But in any case, you do actually make kind of a secondary steering input a little bit further into this corner. So when we come in initially, we turn it enough to put us on an arc that's heading towards that cone, but we have to add a little bit towards, as we get closer to that cone, to put us nice and close to the curb and get a good apex. So this first steering input, you would typically use mostly counter steering to get the bike to turn in. That second steering input, you could probably do it without any counter steering at all and just by moving your body weight a little bit further off to the inside of the motorcycle to help the motorcycle tighten up its line. So when I was talking before about steering the motorcycle with your body weight, steering it with counter steering, obviously the difference here is counter steering, you can make the motorcycle change its lean angle very, very quickly, very effectively, very accurately. Using your body weight, you can affect the lean angle. It's not necessarily a good way of steering the motorcycle, but if you're a mid-corner like this and you want to adjust your line a little bit, moving your body weight to the inside is definitely going to help the bike tighten up its line some. So this is a case where it's a very good example of a place on the racetrack where you might not use counter steering to change your line mid-corner. I think mid-corner is a good place to use that body weight, right? If you're mid-corner and you go to add lean angle by counter steering, you're putting a lot more stress on the front contact patch, right? However, if you can do it with a little bit of body weight, you're not putting any more stress on the contact patch, and you're not using any additional traction really. So I think that in those circumstances, using your body weight to help influence the bike's line or steer the bike slightly is a really good use of that tool. For the most part, when you're steering a motorcycle from straight up and down to leaned over, counter steering is probably going to be the most effective way. Okay, so I think that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or you want to discuss any of the stuff I talked about, I realize some of it may require some discussion. Please put that stuff in the comments and I'll respond to it as best I can. If you subscribe and hit the notification bell, you'll get notifications when I publish new videos, which I'm going to try and do a bit more frequently. So thanks for watching StumanRides, and I'll see you in the next one.